Friends, I'm going to be honest. I underestimated Black and Yellow Big Mom. When I first saw the leader card, I was like, meh. But boy, was I wrong. This deck is a defensive powerhouse. By the way, if you just want the deck list, here it is right here. But I will be going over the core, the essentials, as well as the flex cards I put in here, and explaining kind of how the deck operates. But essentially, the name of the game is defense, right? You want to put out as many defensive cards, as many stally cards as possible in order to get your 10 cost Charlotte Lin Lin, aka Big Mom, the biggest of the Big Moms. And yes, we did try and pack this deck jam pack with all the Big Moms available, so it's actually a very dangerous, very scary deck once you get into the late game of the game. But without further ado, let's get into the breakdown. If you don't know what Charlotte Lin Lin does, she is a black and yellow leader, 5,000 power, 4 life, but Dawn ×2 when attacking. Tap 2, you may trash 1 card from your hand. If you have 1 or fewer cards in your life area, put up to 1 card from the top of your deck onto the top of your life area. So by sacrificing 1 card from hand, it does give you the ability to, recover 1 in life. Now, this is a dangerous strategy just because it requires you to be at 1 life, which, if your opponent has a pretty flooded board, they can swing in multiple times. Very kind of hard to defend against at that point, so be careful of that. But if you can kind of play it right and you have all your defensive pieces out, as well as your, counters in hand, this thing can last a while. But anyway, now that we know what the leader does, let's go ahead into the breakdown of the deck. Alright, and so for our core decks, the name of the game really is stalling to try and find one of our Big Moms, and so the core will really be tied to finding your pieces. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Searcher Pudding. This is just your Big Mom Pirates Searcher. Really good turn 1 play, really good for just finding anything, because you want to get to your 10 cost Big Mom pretty much as soon as possible. Next up is Prospero, who is a great attacker, 3 cost 5k attacker, but he also has the same functionality as Pudding, just slightly delayed because it's an on KO effect for him. But really good natural attacker, can be triggered from life by discarding 1 from hand, and really good for putting a lot of pressure on your non-Whitebeard leaders, just because you can swing without putting anything on him, and then at some point your opponent is going to have to do something about Prospero. Next up on the core cards is 7 cost Big Mom. So this one comes from the starter deck, and honestly it's just really good because 1, very powerful card, 7 cost to play, 8,000 power, no counter, but it does force your opponent to make some decisions. So if you don't know, on play, your opponent chooses 1 from below. Either trash 1 life card from the top of their life area, or put 1 card from the top of your deck into your life area. So would they rather have you get the heal, or would they rather be hurt and down 1 life? A reminder, 1 life that doesn't go into their hand. And then last but not least, we do got our 10 cost Big Mom. This is really your boss monster or boss character for the deck, and can really turn the tides in a fight, or honestly, most likely, cement a lead, as it recovers 1 for you and trashes 1 for your opponent. It essentially does what the 7 cost Big Mom does, but without the choice. It's just everything. And honestly, 10 cost to play, 12,000 power, very hard to get rid of. Alright, and now that we've talked about the core, let's get into the essentials. And here, it's all about defense, right? So for our blockers, we're going to start off with Charlotte Brûlée. 3 cost to play, 1,000 power, counter plus 1k, has the blocker keyword. But kind of more importantly, it can be triggered from life, and it's just a pure play this card, which is awesome. And given Big Mom's ability, there's a good chance that maybe we'll see Brûlée come out of life. But Brûlée is not the only blocker we're talking about here. Next up, we do have Fukuro. Pronunciations are going to be death to me. 3 cost to play, 3,000 power, counter plus 1k. Beautiful thing, this card cannot be KO'd by effects, which if you've seen my Zoro deck profile, or really any red deck profile I've done, there's a lot of KO effects. So to now have a blocker that can't be KO'd by effects is really good in this particular meta. Similarly, Borsalino, fantastic blocker as well. 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, counter plus 1k on your opponent's turn. This character cannot be KO'd by effects, and it gains plus 1k, and has the blocker keyword. And it isn't just about blockers here. We do have our counter events. Ikaku Sovereignty. This is a 2 cost, but plus 5k counter. and then impact wave / shock wave, depending on which language you're playing the game in. But this is a counter with a little bit of extra removal. Alright, that's the essentials. Now let's talk about the flex cards, which can kind of, change up the way that you play this. But first and foremost, I have the 2k counter putting here. Really, honestly, this could be any 2k counter here, but I do like putting as she allows me to search mine or my opponent's leader's life for more info. Next up, we do have Sanji, who's another 2k counter, but maybe a little bit more playable than 2k counter pudding, depending on how you feel about him. If you don't know his effect, well, he's a 2 cost to play, 3000 power, counter plus 2k, but Dawn times 2 when attacking. You can add the top or bottom card of your life area to your hand. Add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life area. It's kind of similar to other yellow effects we've seen, where it ultimately turns out to be a funky draw, just because you get to take 1 from life and then take 1 from top of your deck, put into your life. Essentially, it is a draw. But very solid card if you're looking to not necessarily heal yourself, but just search through your deck a little bit faster. Next up is Shirahoshi, and honestly this is just really good value if it's triggered out of life. It is a 5 cost to play, so a little expensive, 0 power, unfortunate, but counter plus 1k, and on play, draw 3 cards, trash 2 cards from your hand. Trigger, play this card. Really, we are just hoping to play it from life, and with Big Mom's ability, there's a very solid chance of seeing her in our life area. You can play for 5, but honestly, it never feels good. But the ability of draw 3, trash 2 is very solid. Next up, we do have Charlotte Cracker. This is a 4 cost to play, 5000 power, counter plus 1k, Dawn times 1. While you have less life than your opponent, this character gains double attack and plus 1000 power. Trigger, you can discard 1 card from your hand to play this card. Now, we really put this in just on the off chance that we get an opportunity to use the ability, because double attack honestly is a very nice trait to have. Plus, he does have some natural defense in the sense that he's a 1k. And this is just for some added aggression, just because the natural playstyle of Black Yellow Big Mom is to get low in life, and there should be plenty of opportunity, unless you're playing Whitebeard, for it to go off, right? Now, I can see a world where maybe you want to lean more into defense and swap this out with more blockers or 2k counters, perfectly fine, but I kind of like having that extra level of aggression. And the last but not least, I do have Secret Rare Katakuri as a flex card here. Honestly, really powerful card, 8 cost to play, 8000 power, no counter, but on play, put up to 1 character to cost 8 or less on the top or bottom of its owner's life area, face up as well. Essentially, in reality, it's a removal effect, right? And targeting anything 8 cost or lower is honestly really, really good. And the reason I have it as a flex card here, even though it is so good, 8 cost to play, I'm kind of worried about my top end a little bit here, but we're hoping we kind of get into the late game, and hopefully by then, Dawn is not an issue. I did have starter Katakuri in here for a little bit, just to have, similar mindset to that Charlotte Cracker, that if you get the opportunity, really good opportunity to use that ability to get rush. But after playtesting it a little bit more, I wasn't really finding a whole lot of value in the rush Katakuri, and was really missing that removal ability, even though it's a small option, but I like having the option when I see it. Alright, and now that we've gone over the elements, let's go over the full deck profile. Alright, and here we have our ratios. So 1 leader, 4 Shirahoshi, 4 Charlotte Brule, really good defense coming out of life, 4 Searcher Pudding, just because you want all the searches you can. I got 3 Sanjis here, and then 4 Charlotte Pudding to 2k counter, 4 Fukuro, 4 Fukuro, Charlotte Prospero at 4 Borsellino, 3 Charlotte Cracker, and I got 2 7 cost Big Mom, 2 Secret Rare Katakuris, and then 4 10 cost Big Mom, the one that we really, really want to see. And then rounding us out, we do have 4 copies of Ikaku Sovereignty, and then 4 copies of Impact Wave. Like I said, the whole point of this thing is defense, defense, defense. But if you want to see a deck profile that is offense, 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 check out this Zoro deck profile that I did last time, as it's probably going to be another contender high up in the meta.